week, as we are all reminded of the International Women's Day, I've been thinking about the theme, Give to Gain. And to be honest, when I first saw it, my gut reaction was, really? Do we honestly need to be told to give more? I was talking to Denver the other day and I was like, why is the theme give to gain? And in agency world, giving is basically our default setting. You all know this, right? For 20 years, I've lived the story of endless giving, right? We give our heart to our families as daughters, as sisters, as mothers, and then we come here and we give our brilliance to our clients and our teams. I hear it over and over and over. When I talk to the team over the years, I have nothing left to give. But here's the shift. I want us to talk about today, give to gain isn't about doing more work, right? It's about realizing that our energy is our greatest asset. It's about protecting that energy. It's about protecting yourself. We have a voice, an opportunity to lead differently, right? And today, I'm not just sharing my perspective. I've brought some incredible women along with me to break this down. First and foremost, very special guest and dear friend, Wedaad Lima. Thanks for joining us, right? Wedaad and I go way back. We worked together for years when she was at Sunglass Hut and Luxottica for 15 years. And now she is the head of brand and marketing at G-Star for Africa. Back then, she would share stories of what she had to go through working in global structure that is ever evolving, right? And she's seen the global brand side of things that I thought would be inspiring to share with all of you today. So thank you, Wedaad, for joining us. And of course, joining her are Denise and Jean, who you all know are our dearest colleague and leaders here. Ladies, thanks for being here as well. Thank you to do this out of your busy schedule. Okay, so let's get started, right? The agency pace we know is high octane, right? We all felt this empty feeling sometime. Were there a specific moment in your career where you realized giving 110% to a certain environment was actually draining your power rather than building it?
In order to answer this question, I thought back, right, a long time ago, especially to a time where I had less control over like my workload and things like that. So like when I was in my younger days, long hours were very, very normal, right? I don't know about other countries, but especially in Singapore, like you would pay attention to your boss. When your boss leaves, then you can leave. It's like a lot of politics in that sense. So for me, like long hours were normal, but at the same time, I've always had a very can-do attitude. And back then, I could handle a lot, keep multiple balls in the air, and I do it with a smile on my face. And plus at that time, I had very few responsibilities outside of work. I could just do what I like, and I liked to work. And I liked being able to like juggle so many things, and that gave me a really, really big sense of fulfillment. So I guess the moment that really shifted my perspective and made me realize like, okay, I've got to budget my attention a bit better was, of course, when I became a mom. So now I had another responsibility, but more than that, it was like I wanted to be home to spend time with my kid. It wasn't so much about, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. But the expectations around my workload didn't change. And I mean, that was partially my fault because I was the one who kind of set that workaholic benchmark. So when it came time to like, okay, I need to split now, naturally I was trying to reset to like a normal load, but kind of got the sense that people above were like, oh, now she's slacking off. The experience taught me quite a few things about giving. So one is for ourselves, like how do we guard our own capacity to give? So it is only sustainable when it comes with boundaries. Some environments need more boundaries than others, and I'll come back to that point. But at the end of the day, we work to live, and we bring our best energy and our best selves when we also have full lives outside of work. So then back to the point on boundaries. this one I learned more from my own personal life. So I like to think I'm a naturally very giving person. I like to do small things to help people, support people, arts and craft lah, just small things that make people happy or that make life easier for them. So, but once I found myself in an environment with a person who was very, very comfortable to take something that started out as me being happy to give and the person happy to receive, suddenly all these like small acts of kindness turn into expectation. So then I realized like, giving takes energy and it's fine if like the person or the environment you're in also gives back because, you give, the person give back, you're replenishing, you never feel empty. But when that doesn't happen, that's when you like have to start protecting your energy, right? So I found myself pulling back, trying to conserve my energy, trying to lower these expectations because like my little kindnesses became expectations. So I was trying to lower that because I wasn't getting very much in return. So but even in that pulling back, it felt very, very unnatural. It felt very, I mean, it made me feel uncomfortable in my own skin because that's just not the person I am. So if I relate that back to work and today's theme, I think guarding our own capacity to give is one thing, but I really hope like we can create environments where people feel supported enough so that the giving flows naturally, right? So they give, they get back, everybody never feels empty. So that brings me to the last point, which is previously I mentioned, okay, how do we guard ourselves? So now what can others do? I think what others can give in this sense is attention. So if you see someone else who might be giving too much at work, there's a very, very good chance there's something in their life that's being sacrificed. So whether it's sleep, whether it's self-care, whether it's just some leisure time, decompression time, something is being sacrificed. The biggest and most important support we can give is just to notice and check in because sometimes all that person needs, right, is to feel seen. And even just them knowing that they're seen is enough to give them a bit of that replenishment.
Thanks, Denise. I like what you said earlier about budget my attention. So I think, it's about just reallocating and budgeting as in where do you put, because at the end of the day, energy, right? It's like you 100%. How do you sort of like segment it to different prioritization, to different things and all that? And I always say that you have to, when dealing with different situations as well, not everything is at 100%. What is the priority? What is the energy that you're going to give to each of those different things? And the good thing that you said as well is everybody wants to feel seen. And so it's so that they don't feel, empty as well. And because, they've been giving and giving. So always good to check in. So want to thank you. I can see that in the attendees that not just female, right? So we have a lot of guys attending this call as well. Thank you for your support. So it's always important to check in. I think that's what Denise says, is to really make sure that you check in on your colleagues and just make sure that they feel heard and they're, they don't feel like they are empty. So I think it's just having the empathy and understanding of the complexity of being a woman, right? You're single, you're married, you have a husband, you have a kid, your wife, you have families, you have sisters, all of these things that plays into consideration. Now, Jean, talking about, being a wife as well, right? You got married recently, was it last year, right? And so one of the things that we, as a client servicing person, it's always hard to say no to client. So let's dissect that. In this case, setting boundaries in this industry usually comes with a side of guilt. How do you handle that internal pressure to do it all, while still protecting your energy?
In the Philippines, it's the same also in terms of the agency work. We are like, I was even wondering, like, even before the pandemic, like, we would attend meetings from 8 to 5, and then you actually only do the work 5 p.m. onwards. Like, how were we able to do that before? Anyway, so honestly, now that I'm a bit older, I have to say I'm so surprised with the amount of expectations there are on women versus men. And my experience comes from, what my husband has to think about when it comes to our life versus what I have to think about by default, because I'm the woman. I think a lot of people here would understand what I'm talking about. They say, do it all. Why are we, like all of the pressures of being a career woman, having time for yourself, having time for your aging parents, your immediate family, make sure you exercise, you eat healthy, eat enough protein, be socially aware, run the household, buy the groceries, pay the bills, help others. And on top of that, we even have our monthly periods. Can you imagine being a man and having this like consistent energy that doesn't fluctuate during the month. And I'm not even a mom yet. So the whole kids part that Denise talked about, I'm not even worrying about that yet. And yet there seems to be so much pressure to do it all. And it's really crazy when it comes to energy. But when we talk about energy, actually one line that I love is actually something that Taylor Swift said. You should think of your energy as if it's expensive, like it's a luxury item. Not everyone can afford it. So she explained that a lot of people let, one negative comment or an argument or internet drama ruin their day. And her philosophy is the opposite. Instead of reacting to every single thing, every single difficulty that you have in your workday, treat your emotional attention like a scarce resource. If someone hasn't invested in your life or your well-being, if this comment is coming from someone you don't really know, you won't really interact with anymore, then they shouldn't get access to that energy. They aren't part of that do it all objective. Treat your attention and emotional bandwidth as valuable currency. Again, like just what you said, Fee, spend it on things that matter. Allocate it in terms of capacity planning. Allocated to things that matter, your friends, work you care about, things that spark joy, not random noise or negativity. And a tiny mental experiment, I guess, that maybe everyone in this call could try is imagine waking up each day with 100 energy credits, just like your phone. You charge it overnight, you sleep, you get 100 energy credits throughout the day. Every single thing that you do requires energy. So usually by noon, most people are already bankrupt without noticing because you had, let's say, one very horrible call that drained your energy in the morning. So every day, allocate your energy wisely. Don't spend it all on work. Don't spend it all on things that drain it exponentially. Leave some for yourself, for your family, and maybe even try to experiment on things that actually replenish it throughout the day. Find out what that is. So the trick in essence is simple. Refuse to spend your energy.
Oh my God, I love it. I love this credit energy thing. And I like the fact that you said capacity planning. So we're all in the zone of work
Correct.
because at
Yeah.
Greenpark we talk about capacity planning, of the resources. So same thing we apply to our own personal life is energy like credit. I love it. That you want to share a little bit about yourself so everybody has understanding?
Yeah, so I'm Wedaad. I worked for a company called Sunglass Hut for a very long time. It was practically my first real job straight after school. I literally started as a sales consultant, always gave more than what was expected, I think, sometimes.
You always do.
Because of that, I do it. Like, I was literally a child when I started working for Sunglass Hut, but there was a journey. I like to apply the story in terms of sort of leadership when I work with younger sort of team members, because I went all the way from sort of sales consultant to sales manager to marketing coordinator to brand to social media content manager to senior brand manager, all in South Africa. And then eventually, which I'm very grateful for because it taught me so much, this opportunity within Sunglass Hut opened up for me to then move to Singapore, run the Southeast Asia marketing department for Sunglass Hut. Oh, there's an opportunity in Singapore. And I'm like, but I gave you all of that commitment when I was single. What am I going to do now? Luckily, again, there's a lot of men, I think, who we need to be thankful for. My husband's one of them. He basically said to me, this is a dream of yours. I don't know how many people know a lot about the history of South Africa. And it was sort of my opportunity to shine, which I took, but it was quite scary at the same time. A lot happened during COVID. I had also my second child. I lost my mom. I then made the decision to move back to South Africa. Even through my interview process with G-Star, visa was a pivotal part of that, because I was like, oh my gosh, they're asking me to do this whole strategy document. And we all know Fiza's amazing. She just gave me those pushes in actually what was a very difficult time for me, and I got the role. But yeah, that's sort of a little bit
It's a
about me and
lot.
my career.
It's massive. It's a lot. And I think we all know that, when we're working with global, organization, they do have some rigid structures, right? So
Yeah.
I wanted to know, how do you find the courage to lead your own way? Because we know that sometimes global pressures is telling you to move in a certain direction. And where do you stand and say, this is how I lead, even if it's not what is expected, from them.
Yeah, it's something you learn. So I think this is a lot of what we had touched on during our conversations in Singapore as well. So the company itself was pretty male dominant. And me, I think at the time was just this little brown girl going into offices, big boardrooms with these massive expectations. And often before you even say something, your voice is already in your head. It's so soft. You will knock on that door multiple times and you will get no for an answer multiple times. But at some point, I guess now after so many years, I do get the yeses, but also because I show up differently enough.
Yeah, I admire the fact that you were able to stay for 15 years in one place, because I'm sure it takes a lot, right? You were moving, you were saying just now, from the ground up all the way, right, to the top. And I think it's always hard to keep fighting or maintaining your beliefs, your value, what you stand for. And over time, it just get chips away slowly over the years, right? So I think my question is, how do you, yeah, and you mentioned earlier, do you want to be resilient, right? Do you want to keep continuing to be resilient? But at the end of the day, it's how do you make sure that, you ensure that you are still you, right?
Yeah. So that I learned maybe the hard way. I don't know. I can't take away from, my experience and the journey. I think you do have to do the hard yards to a certain extent. But yeah, I think it's just if I were to do it over, it would be to sort of remind myself not to be overly consumed by it. And I think there was at the time, a lot of the times you sort of get fed the story. There's this preconceived assumption that to succeed, you have to give more of your time, more of your energy, prove ongoing every day, prove that you deserve to be at the table, and that mindset, it can be powerful until it exhausts you.
Exhausting, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, showing up consistently, I think with the company that I worked for, luckily there was, everlasting sort of succession mapping. So I guess there was that side of things that kept me there as well. But yeah, so I spent all of that years there. And then I must say, I loved the company. I also, in all of those years, made it a priority to keep learning, to understand sort of different parts of the business, different people, building relationships. And I know what I bring to the table and I protect my energy.
I'm glad that you found your new home, that you can really make sure that you budget your, your energy accordingly, right, to your family and, to work. And you're still the head. I mean, you're still, doing the best that you can. You just find that balance and what is right. Earlier, we talked about boundaries, right? I want to go a level deeper. We often our own harshest critic. We can say, clients is tough on us or whatever, but we are the harshest on ourselves, right? We always overthink everything and we think at the end of the day, oh my God, did I do this? Did I not do that? And so how do you personally remind yourself that you are enough, that you are, because when external structures or, history, agency or anybody else is telling you otherwise, how do you manage that, from yourself?
Yeah, thanks, V. Actually, when I look back on the agencies I've been in, I'm happy to say that at least, in the Philippines, a lot of the agencies are actually led by very strong women. My direct bosses when did I start working? This is 15 years ago. My direct bosses have always been women. Lucky to say, I don't think I've had an experience where a promotion was given to a man versus me. There's not a lot of patriarchy, at least in the day here, because the leaders of agencies are either women or, the fabulous gays. But of course, we still can't avoid it when sometimes we are faced with, sorry to say, the boomers of the world who still think that Asians are less, women are less. For me personally, I would, because I look younger than I am, most of the time, people kind of they're not sure if they can take me seriously until we start working together, and it still happens. So what I do when this happens is I focus on the team, I focus on the work, because what I've learned so far is if you do your work well, especially I mean just putting it in the context of working, if you do your work well, your clients look good, then they are happy with you, then they give you more projects. Then they even, introduce you to other people. You sustain the revenue of your company. You keep the company alive. And then you prove everyone wrong. That's basically how you do it, right? You just do the job well, excellently. Every little thing, do it excellently. And going back to like the theme of this give to gain, what it highlights, I think, for me are the things that women leaders actually often do extremely well. And I know this because again, I've been reporting to women bosses my whole life, of course, Yuffie included. And it's really, mentorship, knowledge sharing, collaborative leadership, and building supportive cultures. I think that's what most women leaders do well. And actually personally, I'd like to reframe these traits. It's usually what they would call soft skills. And I don't know why. It's as if it's less important, but I don't think it is. It actually should have, equal billing in terms of what you should carry with you as you lead the team. So reframing these soft skills as strategic advantages because in the end, these are the things we shouldn't be gatekeeping. When we focus on, upskilling and lifting the entire team with us, we all gain the benefits as a whole, right? So I guess that's what I do. I just focus on the work, the people, and then in the end, it all works out. It usually does. Yeah.
Okay. I love that. I think it's all about reframing what is enough, our contributions to a job well done. Remember, we decide that, right? We decide that and not external validation. I think it's also important to reframe failing. I was talking to my coach the other day and he said failing is just first attempt in learning, which spelled out fail, right? So to
Oh,
me,
I love that.
yeah, yeah. So to me, that's a
Okay.
different perspective. Instead of seeing it as you fail, I see it as I'm learning. It's just my first attempt, So it's all just about different perspective. We talked about the challenges a lot that we go through in our career, but let's talk about the win. Denise, how has your unique background served as an opportunity to lead differently than status quo? I think when I say again unique, it's more on the ethnicity. When we work for global agencies, when we work, for international diversity agency, our role of, as mixed, as Asian and all that, we do have a unique sort of, so how do you, use that as an opportunity to lead differently?
Okay. I mean, yes, I am firstly, of course, female, and then in the Singapore context, very, very much a minority. So for those who don't know, I'm Eurasian, which is like there's Chinese majority, and then there's Malay, and then there's Indian, and then like Eurasians are barely even recognized as a race anymore.
I didn't know that.
Unique, it's unique.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, I think having that background maybe even helped me a little bit because people were always curious, like they couldn't fit me into a box. So it would always spark conversations. And then of course when they find out, oh, there's some European in there, then it's like, you are part white. I'm like, no, fully brown, but all right. So yeah, I mean, it has opened doors in the sense that it just starts the conversation going. And then, through that, I can prove that I have substance. I'm not just this weird, we call it rojak in Singapore, which is like a dish with a lot of mixed ingredients that don't look like they should go together. But once you put them together with some sauce and some peanuts, it works great. So yeah. And then if I'm thinking about like gender discrimination, for example, very similar to Jin, actually. I've always been led by female line managers, so I've been very lucky in that sense. So any direct gender discrimination hasn't really been a part of my experience. In the earlier years, there was definitely a gender wage gap, but happy to say, like in the last 7 years, I mean, especially since I've been in leadership and I've had an influence on this, it hasn't been an apparent part of my experience. The one interesting experience that I had in my earlier years was when I was a senior PM. So at the time, I had a female manager. She was local Chinese, and not that was, her being a majority had any impact at all. But she would constantly tell me to be more assertive, more aggressive. And then, that just wasn't me, right? But now I realize that was her way of showing up as a strong female leader, she had to be very loud. She had to be extremely decisive, make very quick decisions, and be very assertive and loud about it. So when it came time for me to move into a leadership role, I really, really had to think. I had to think like, okay, do I need to train that? Do I need to practice being more assertive? Like, let me like from more so people take me more seriously. But I mean, it didn't feel right. So I knew I had to figure out my own style. So then I had to craft an approach to leadership that felt more natural to me. And I realized that was basically education, right? So to focus on opportunities for people around me to grow rather than corrective action. So, I mean, even now, and I'm sure many people have experienced this with me, I always use like cause and effect reasoning, right? So I don't just want to tell people we cannot do this, full stop. I want everyone to understand like the reasons behind it. And that actually makes them feel equipped and empowered to make better choices. So I think an example that a lot of people here will be able to relate to is resource requests. So leads are always talking to me about resource requests. So when I first started out here,
you cannot hire this person. No, you cannot.
yeah, exactly right. So when I first started out here, like there were so many. Every time there's a project, it's like new project equals resource request. So I guess if I was trying to be this more assertive person, then the response would have been like, I don't know, I just screenshot Paprika and say, no, look, you have capacity, right? But I mean, again, that's not my style. So I would actually like, sit down and say, okay, here's the cause of overpadding. If we were to overpad, what is the long-term effect? And then get people to really understand like why certain decisions have to be made, and not just that, but let's work something out. So not just like my decision is no, full stop, go away. It's okay, let's see what else we can do. Is it freelance? Is it short term? What can we do to make sure that everyone feels supported, but at the same time we're being financially responsible? Yeah, so what I found is that over time, actually I got fewer requests because the leads now understand. Yeah, they understand. Like they already get it. They're like, okay, maybe in their heads it's like, what
Before
would
even
Denise tell
asking
me?
you, they already know. Okay, this is what Denise is gonna say. So
Yeah.
thanks for sharing, Denise.
To finish up, I mean, this is not to say that assertiveness does not have its place. I mean, we certainly have like some very assertive people here, and I that is absolutely necessary. But I think the opportunity for me was realizing that strong leadership does not have to look one way. And in fact, organizations are the strongest when there's a mix. So when there's a time for more pragmatic approach, there's a time for assertive approach, and having a mix allows us to kind of deploy the different leadership styles when it's needed. So yeah, I think in the past it kind of felt like the loudest people move ahead. I mean, that's where the phrase nice guys finish last come from, right? So I think if we're talking about, okay, what can people do, is I think we can place value in impact over noise, allow people to rise on their own terms, which is like the theme of this discussion. I mean, so far, based on my experience here, how my approach has been received, I feel at least in Greenpark APAC, we're already doing that. But yeah, I just hope we can continue to spread that awareness.
I think that's a very good point. I know that a lot of ladies go through that. Is how do you make sure that being aggressive versus being assertive, right? So we can still be assertive without being loud, just different style, like you said, and I think it's just about trying to find that balance and finding your own style and finding your own way to still do a good job, right? So that's how you lead your own way, right? Because at the end of the day, it's just about finding your own way, instead of just following what everybody expects of you. Wedaad, I'd love to hear your take on this.
Yeah, somewhat similar, but sort of, I think one of the opportunities my journey has given me is the ability to see leadership through a different lens. As I mentioned before, come from a very male-dominant space. I was this little young woman from South Africa, like, what are you doing in this boardroom with us? But regardless, I think, again, you can't take away from the experiences, they shape you. I guess, you learn to sort of listen carefully. That's what I took away from it. So also there's a lot to be said for starting from the bottom, I think, and building your way up. It's big picture for you, right? And I believe that's really what has shaped me in terms of my leadership today. Show up as your true self, have a voice, contribute in a meaningful way, be nice, be authentic. Those opportunities already exist. So anyway,
I just want to ask all three of you, which I know a lot of people want to know. We all carry heavy stones earlier in our career, whether it's bias, whether it's pressure. We thought, these are things that we have to deal with, we have to bear, we have to carry. So what is one stone that you want the younger generation watching us today to just set down? Denise, you want to start?
Oh, okay. I think it may come as a surprise to some, but a while ago, hiring managers used to actually, when interviewing a woman or considering her for a promotion, there was a thought in their mind that went, oh, how likely is this woman to become a mom soon if she wasn't already? Like if she was in her mid to late 20s, it was basically like, oh, she's gonna want kids soon, her attention will be divided. And then in order to counter that, like we as women would make sure we're doing not just what we need to do, but more, especially when you have the kid, because you want to show that there's none of that. Yes, my priorities are split, but my attention is absolutely not divided, and we feel the need to show more. But the reality today is that many men, especially, at least amongst the one I know, they're the kind who share responsibilities at home. If their spouse decides that, housewife, house husband, house partner is not the thing for them, they share the load. They want to be involved with their kids. Yes, even for kids. So they don't just feel a sense of responsibility, and they actually want to be around their families. So this whole thing where, women are going to be distracted, right? That whole like distracted mother mindset, I think really needs to die violently.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I think yes, that is important reminder. I know there's some people also that when they got pregnant or they're gonna give birth, they don't want to tell it because they're scared. Like even, oh my God, they're gonna say that I'm just gonna do less work and all that. And I think it's important to know that we should know that everything that we're doing is the best that we can. And going back to what the conversation that we had earlier on being enough, and only you yourself can determine and decide what is enough, not anybody else. So that's important reminder to note. Jean, Wedaad, anything you guys want to add in?
Yeah, for me, I think early in my career, I've always thought, and everyone around me basically operates on the idea that you have to prove yourself to get promoted. You have to overtake everyone. You have to take all the opportunities for yourself. But related to this team, I think it's actually more about giving instead of taking, right? So like the moment you start sharing what you know, you open doors, you back others, your influence multiplies. And honestly, I believe you are the best example for this. Just the amount of energy that you put into, setting up sessions like this one, like the Grit the Great sessions. Like whenever I come to you with a challenge I have, in a heartbeat, you give me like 2 to 3 options what to do next. Because basically being so generous in terms of how to be a better boss, how to manage difficult clients and situations. So I don't think I'm at your level, but what I try to do is, really not gatekeeping things that I know can make life or work easier. For example, here's a trick that I discovered. Here's a prompt that helps me do this more effectively. Always sharing words of wisdom I learned from my past bosses, or like basically, yeah, not gatekeeping. So it's not about overtaking everyone, and then in the end being very lonely at the top because all of your friends hate you already. It's about bringing everyone with you to the top. That I think really give to gain in action.
Thank you, Jean. Very kind of you to say. I
It's
love
true.
to give as best as I can. We did.
Yeah, I think it's the point that I brought up initially. It's that sort of belief that you constantly have to prove that you belong in the room. To make away with that, the results speak for itself. Let women be mothers, wives, everything else, and just look at the results.
Thank you, Wedaad. Giving, which is also to do it and leading on your, the whole topic today was really leading on your own terms. And I think that's really important because, as women and as Asian women, and, I feel like most time it's a certain way of doing things. People, there's expectation and all that. So one piece of advice that I would give is don't wait for someone to give you that opportunity, and don't, stop waiting for the right time, because it's always like oh, I don't know if it's the right time for me to get promotion. It's not the right time for me to ask for that project. It's not, there will never be the right time. You just have to do it, decide it's yours and make the call. And I wanted to quickly share this. I think most of you know that my story, my career, I created the path for myself. But there's one thing that most of you would probably not know is that I wanted to share a story of how I got into Ogilvy. Most of you know I was a creative director at Ogilvy for a few years. But what you don't know is that I was initially hired as a project manager. So I was very young. I was in my early 20s and I don't have a lot of portfolio, but I've done a couple of work. I work in Microsoft before. I've done a lot of project management work. I was a programmer. So I put together a case and I said, okay, maybe there's a position as a project manager in Ogilvy. I'm just going to apply. And I got in. And I was like, okay, here's my opportunity. Here's my opportunity to go to the creative side because that's my passion, right? First few months, I did a few project management. It was a social work. It was a creative work. I sort of like assert myself in a lot of those project ideation. I made sure that a lot of the key right people, see me as somebody really creative. Initially, there was a lot of pushback because you're just a project manager. Leave the creative to the creative. So I was like, that didn't stop me. I was just going to keep pushing my ideas until the president of PR division saw the work that I did and wanted to hire me as a creative for the PR. Created my whole division, and there you go. To me, if you believe in what you want to do, don't wait for people to give you opportunity because probably gonna wait a long time. Just go, just have a plan and just go and do it. Talk to the right people, make a lot of noise, and you can lead the whole your own way. And I think that's sort of like, how I've led my whole career. Okay, thank you very much. It's a very interesting session. Thank you, Wedaad. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Denise, for joining us. So the moral of the story is lead your own way. Okay, cool. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Everyone.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.